Hi everyone, it's Dara. So today we're going to talk about a topic that can be a little controversial for some, but it's an important topic especially for the ESL teacher as well as the ESL student, and that is called cultural awareness. Now, what is cultural awareness? Basically what it means is it's to be aware of many different cultures. As an ESL student, you are going to be in a classroom of people from all over the world. In some programs, you may have classmates that are from the same country as you, but maybe from different parts of that country. For most ESL classes, your classmates will be from different countries, different places. For ESL teachers, this is also a way for you to learn about different cultures as well. From my personal experience, being an African American woman born in the United States of America, I have been faced with students from all over the world. I have been lucky to meet people from China, from South Asia, from Saudi Arabia, from Dubai, from Africa, you name it, I've met them. Now, you might be wondering to yourself, whether you're a teacher or a student, why is cultural awareness so important? It is important for many reasons. One of the things that as teachers we have to be mindful of is that we more than likely will be different from our students. In order for us to really, one, get an understanding of who we are teaching, and for the students to feel comfortable with us, we have to be aware of each other's culture. So I'm not suggesting that you have to know the history of every single culture, but one of the things you want to do as the teacher is find out where your students are from. This is a great way to not only start a conversation, but to help both the student and yourself to learn about each other. Don't be afraid also as the instructor to introduce your culture. Talk about where you're from. And again, it depends on how comfortable you are in doing this. One of the things I will say right now that you don't want to do is you don't want to include politics or religion as part of your cultural discussion. Now, some may argue that politics and religion is part of someone's culture, and indeed it is. We have to be careful when we talk about politics and religion. We want to be respectful of everyone's culture and background, and also everyone's political views and religious background. For example, if you have a student who is Muslim and they are from the country of Yemen, you can ask the student, where are you from? And that student may say, I am from Yemen. Or that student might say, my name is, I am Muslim, I am from Yemen. Now that's great because the student introduced him or herself as being a Muslim individual. You also want to make sure that you don't make the whole class about Islam or the religion of that student, because again, you might have students from different countries who practice different beliefs or don't practice any belief at all. So you just want to be very careful with that. For me, I'm an American, so if I was to come into my ESL class and I said, I am from the United States, and someone in the class raised their hand, and this actually has happened, and said, teacher, are you a Democrat or are you a Republican? Now, you might feel there's no harm in answering that. So you might say, I'm a Democrat. Then that same student might ask you, how do you feel about your president? Now, this is where it gets controversial, because now I'm going to be talking about my political views, and the other students in the class may not necessarily agree with my views. So you want to try your best to deter yourself from getting political. You want to keep everything very basic and simple, and it's okay as the instructor to say, thank you for your question, but we want to leave politics out of this discussion, or I don't feel comfortable discussing that, because that way you don't want the class to go from a lesson to an argument or a debate. Now, let me say this for the ESL student. Even if the teacher is not having a lesson or not teaching a lesson about different cultures, you might find yourself with your classmates having a general conversation, and someone in that conversation may ask you about your personal political beliefs or your religious beliefs. And again, you as an adult student have the right to say, I don't want to talk about that, or that's personal, I don't want to answer that question. And you as the student who is maybe asking those questions have to be respectful of that student. Every culture when it comes to conversation, when it comes to certain topics, is different. In some cultures, it is forbidden to talk about politics, someone's president, someone's dictator, or someone's religion. So even if you come across a student as the teacher, or as you as the student to your classmate, if you are in a situation where someone is being resistant about talking about their background, be respectful of that. Maybe in that person's culture, they are not allowed to discuss. Another thing that's important for both the teacher and the student is this also helps to what we call break the ice, which means it helps to keep everyone. Cultural awareness is important for many reasons. One of the main reasons is it helps everyone to start to feel comfortable with each other. We are all different. We are all different people, and some people may feel uncomfortable with maybe certain groups of people or certain genders or certain religious backgrounds or whatever, and this can make things very tense, especially in the first week of your ESL class for both the teacher as well as the student. But as the teacher, remember, as I said before, you are the driver of this car, so you have to be mindful of how and in what direction you want these questions to go. What I would suggest you to do is, if you're finding yourself being asked a lot of questions about your culture, or students are interested in learning about each other's culture, make a lesson out of it. Make a lesson out of it as opposed to just randomly talking, because this is where there could be some gray areas, and I have had experiences where this actually has happened. So my suggestion would be, make a lesson out of it. For the students, this is great because they're talking, and if they're talking in English, even better. But I hate to say this, and this is something that a lot of people don't want to hear, but for the most part, a lot of people have prejudices against other cultures or against other types of people, and so we don't want to stir up controversy. We don't want to cause anyone to feel like they're being discriminated against, or they're feeling non-accepted into the class. And when you make a lesson of a cultural awareness subject, you want to have a specific focus. So maybe the focus is on getting to know your classmate, and as part of that lesson, you ask questions like, oh, where are you from? What language do you speak? Etc. This also encourages students to be structured in a way where they don't feel like they can just ask anything. They know, oh, I can only ask my classmate these questions. Oh, this is a conversation practice. There's new words to be learned. There's new grammar points to be learned and to be practiced. So it goes from just having a general random conversation to an actual lesson. For advanced classes, it can turn into a general conversation, but again, as a teacher, you want to be very careful with this. I have taught advanced classes where it might have started out from a lesson into a conversation, and although that's great because the students are talking and communicating, but keep in mind there will be some topics that might come up in a conversation that might make yourself as the teacher feel uncomfortable, or the other classmates. So I have been in classes, honestly, where I have seen people get in very bad arguments to the point where it almost became physical because of different opinions. And you want to be very careful that it doesn't lead to that. Another reason why cultural awareness is so important is because it teaches all of us a sense of understanding. Now, some people would say, well, what's the difference between understanding and acceptance? Understanding is just being able to comprehend a person's background. You may not necessarily accept the person's background or culture, but you can understand it, and there's a mutual respect. For acceptance, it just means that you actually are okay with the person's culture and background, and you accept it as such. And this goes for both teacher and student. There have been students who have come to me and have asked me the following question: Teacher, I live in the United States now. Am I an American? Teacher, I am from this country. Am I still part of my country? As an instructor, this is a question that could be either easy or difficult to answer. Here's my response to students who ask me this question. I always like to say, where you're from is where you're from, and it's who you are. Embrace your culture and embrace where you're from. Yes, you may be living in the United States now. You may even become a United States citizen, but you are still a part of your culture, your birth culture, so to speak, where you was born at. This country is filled with many different cultures. So it's okay to say, I am an American and I am originally from whatever the country you are from. This is how I like to respond. Your response may be different, but you don't want to make this mistake. And you're an American now, so you're no longer from XYZ country. You want to make sure that you allow that person to identify how he or she feels or who they are. You don't want to identify them as such. Now, cultural awareness can also lead into other great lessons, such as talking about prejudices and discrimination. But again, as the teacher, you want to have this structure. These are very broad topics and there's a lot involved. And you also want to be mindful of the level of students that's in your class. If you're teaching a beginner's class, keep it very basic and very simple. If you're teaching an advanced class, yes, you can do a little more with that class. But you also always, no matter what you decide to do as the teacher and for students as well, you always want to keep a mutual respect. Respect is the most important thing, no matter what you're discussing, no matter how you're conducting the class, no matter how the students are working with each other. Everyone must have respect for each other because we're all in this together. Cultural awareness is something, in my personal opinion, that needs to be more discussed, not just inside the ESL classroom, but outside. It's a discussion that needs to be talked about because I think there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to different cultures of people, and this is why there's so many different prejudices and stereotypes and disagreements. So I would encourage you, if you're an ESL teacher, I would encourage you to really learn as well as understand the cultures of your students. And as the ESL student, do the same thing. It's okay if you don't like a certain culture or a certain person's background. That's fine. You are entitled to that. But when you're inside the classroom, there has to be a mutual respect because respect goes a long, long way. Not only that, it also helps the learning process to become more of a flow as opposed to stress and frustration or just overall disrespect. You want the ESL class to be a fun but a learning experience with structure. You don't want it to become a place where people feel it's okay to argue and disrespect each other. You don't want that. I hope that this topic has inspired you to maybe address that in your classroom as a teacher, and for the ESL student, I hope that inspires you to talk to your classmates about cultural awareness. If you're interested in learning more about this topic or you have any suggestions or ideas, please feel free to contact me on my blog, which is motivationesl.blogspot.com, or I am on social media on Twitter and Instagram, or you can just leave a comment below this video. I do have an email address. I will include that as well, so feel free to reach out to me. Thank you so very much for watching. I really appreciate it, and as always, I'll see you next time.